Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Titans legend Chris Johnson is in the Zoom with us. So soon, hey, there he is, CJ, hanging out with us here on 104.5 The Zone. If we could just get him unmuted, Jackson, we will be ready to rock, and we can get his opinions on everything that's been going on with this football team in the last couple. I mean, hell, today they signed safety Jamal Adams. They add Calvin Ridley to the mix, Tony Pollard. So many other different players. CJ2K on with us now on 104.5 The Zone. Chris, great pleasure to speak with you for the first time. How we living, boss?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Man, Titans fans are in a pretty good mood based on the offseason that they've had. It's funny talking to a lot of old heads, just catching up with some guys like Lawan and Delaney Walker in the last couple of weeks. How many day one free agency signings this team made this year, Chris, in ways that they're not really accustomed to seeing. The Titans organization being that aggressive as buyers on the market.
Well, I think that speaks a lot to Rand Carthon, and one of the reasons why Miss Amy Adams brought him in. He's a guy that's coming from San Fran and seeing the type of team they put together and continue on bringing in guys, even though that offense was loaded. They continue to bring in guys after guys after guys in order, at the end of the day, their main goal is to win the Super Bowl. And I know he's run that same formula over to Tennessee and just continue to stacking his offense up, trying to stack the defense up, and just, have that same goal that I'm sure every other GM or head coach or owner have around the league, and that's what is it going to take to get us over the hump to get us to that Super Bowl.
At Chris Johnson 28 is where you can follow CJ on Twitter. He's hanging out with us talking about this Titans offseason. So you mentioned Rand, and I know that you've been getting into personnel evaluation yourself here in the last couple of years, or at least exploring opportunities that are available to you. Have you gotten much interaction with Rand?
Yeah, me and Rand, we've had some talks, couple talks back and forth, and and I know what I want to do, and I want to be part of that process of helping Tennessee get to that next level, help them get to the Super Bowl, provide myself to Rand with any opportunities I can. To try to help him scout, to try to help him look at players and things like that. And I'm available and I'm willing, and, God's willing, we can put something together and, make something happen.
So what were your impressions of talking to him and kind of getting to know him a little bit? Because he seems to be pretty renowned at this point for his ability to create these relationships and then to capitalize on them. He's, talked about knowing Ridley or knowing Calvin Ridley as a South Florida person, as somebody who grew up in South Florida, a certain type of guy, right? Being able to relate to dudes that way and kind of playing a little more of a personal role than I feel like a lot of GMs do, Chris, where there's always been kind of that separation of church and state. He seems like he's done a really good job at bridging the gap with these players.
Right. It's crazy because when I was younger, middle school, high school, I used to, back then, it wasn't like how it is these days where you get to see all of the different college games. When Saturday come on now, you probably can see 10 to 15, 20 different college football games. Back when I was in middle school and high school, we would only get Florida State, Florida, Miami, and UCF, we'll get those games. So I used to check Rand out when he was at Florida and stuff like that. So it was crazy when he first got the job. A good friend of mine, Edrin James, he introduced me and Rand or whatever. So we've been talking since he first got the job, before he was even introduced to the media over there in Tennessee. And, we just been talking here and there and just staying in contact with each other. But like you say, he got those Florida ties, and, he know how to get to know these players, because no matter how good a player is, they still have to fit the system. They still have to fit the chemistry of the team. They, you know what I'm saying? Make the locker room a good locker room, and for everybody to want to fight each other, give blood, sweat, and tears and all those type of things. And he have that niche and knowing how to put that together. And, I would be grateful if I can, just, sit behind him, learn some of the techniques on how he evaluate players and how he put them together and how it makes sense for a certain team and how it don't make sense for a certain team. Because at the end of the day, I got twin boys that play sports, that play football, and it's going to come to a point one day where they're going to have to, go through the recruiting process or go through the draft process, Lord willing. So, I'm just here waiting to learn. And I feel like he's a great guy to learn behind, especially me and him playing the same positions. So,
how much of that perspective can only come from being a former player that way, Chris? Because there's a lot of people who go through the scouting process who may have some experience at different levels of football, but having that NFL background, knowing how the process works and knowing what players are going to go through on at each phase of it, at every point of their career, how important is that perspective to have in these front office meetings?
It's definitely important because, like, if I was like a scout, and no knock on the scouts that haven't played the sport, because there's some great ones out there, and I'm not going to sit here and say you need to be a guy that have done played the sports to be a great scout or GM or whatever it is. But what the difference is, and what I feel like some of the advantages is of being a former player than being a scout or a GM, is like it's easy to go and scout this player and know this and know that and see what he put on tape and interview his coaches, his guidance counselor and stuff like that, and see what kind of guy he is. But it's only certain things that you can get out of a player or know about a player if you haven't played before. But if you've played, it's things that you've been through yourself. Like, as far as just like giving an example, like being a guy that wasn't as highly scouted and then, end up being that guy and then being one of the top guys in the league and then having a down year and knowing how to keep that focus and knowing how to, okay, I got to get back in my bag. I got to get back to my day one stuff and bring yourself back up to the top, because it's going to be bumps in the road. It's like you will never have a guy in this league who's just like the best guy in the league and he never have a down year or go through things or never have a slump of like 3 or 4 or 5 games and have to come up out of that slump. So it's different things that goes into it that a guy that never played before, he probably don't know how to come out of that slump. But a guy that's played before and then been through it and then been in a slump and came out of it, now I know how to translate that to the player or to players because I've been through it and I've been successful with getting in a slump and coming out of the slump and like prevailing from it. So I feel like those are the difference. And being that Rand has been through it himself, I feel that like that helps him out a lot as well.
Titans legend Chris Johnson hanging out here with us on 104.5 The Zone.
So, Chris, obviously a lot of the excitement about this offseason has been driven about the offensive moves, hiring an offensive-minded head coach, what Will Levis can be, Calvin Ridley, all about your side of the ball, but the defense undergoing a massive overhaul as well. The Jamal Adams signing announced and reported today. You only overlapped with Jamal for 1 year in your final year in the league, his rookie year. I know you guys didn't play against one another, but what do you think about Jamal's sort of development, evolution as an NFL player from 2017 to now? And what are you most excited to see about this new Titans defense under Denard Wilson?
Man, I'm just excited to see it. Just like on the offensive side, you need that leader. You need that guy. I feel like bringing Jamal in, you getting that quarterback of the defense, you getting that guy that's experienced, that have been through it. He know how to, I know he's good with rushing the passer or blitzing him and still covering it in the back end and just putting guys in the places that they need to be put in. Like this team that Rand is putting together, it kind of remind me of the year, my first year when I went to Arizona, when we went all the way to the NFC championship game. Like we had a stellar offense, we had a stellar defense, but guys was getting hurt and things like that. And BA continue to bring veteran guys in just to plug them in and to help put us over the top. So I kind of see this team kind of like that team.
Chris, with all the moves that they've made, it seems like for the first time, at least in a while, and I know, every organization goes through philosophical shifts as coaches change, as front office personnel changes, but this has been a run the football, play defense franchise for as long as anybody could remember, right? Now we're talking about seeing the Titans run out there in 3 wide receiver sets for the majority of their base personnel, essentially, and doing so with Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, and a proven slot guy like Tyler Boyd coming over with this Brian Callahan offense from Cincinnati. How much, as a running back, how much does that open up for you when things are spread out and keeps those defenders from loading the box that way?
Oh, man, I love it. I love it. As much as the offense that I was in, especially when I was there, you have your 2 tight end sets, your 2 receivers. Sometimes they put 2, 3 tight ends in there, 1 receiver. But as a running back, when you can spread it out and have 3 guys out there that's really potential guys that can hurt the defense, that means you can't stack the box. You can't put 3 linebackers in there. Sometimes you got to play that nickel in there. So when you have that type of offense, and as a running back where you can be a threat in the pass game as well, you don't see a lot of those 8-9-man boxes. Now you're seeing 6-man, 7-man box. And as a running back, anytime you see a 7-man box, you licking your chops. You see a 6-man box, you really licking your chops. So when you can play out of that offense and run your whole offense out of a 3 receiver set, 1 running back, 1 tight end, it's very hard to stop.
How much do you enjoy putting that kind of strain on a defense when you have, and especially these 2 running backs that they now have, and we'll get to Derrick Henry's portion of this later because it's always weird when a legend moves on, whether it was you, whether it was Eddie, Derrick Henry now, and that's the life cycle of the NFL. But these 2 backs, and Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard, you can split them out in the formation. You can run these empty sets and continue to put that additional strain and not kind of give away your hand as an offense. And for, Derrick being an excellent player, understanding why the offense ran through him first and foremost, there is a level of kind of showing your hand when Derrick Henry's in the backfield that this team seems like it's going to be able to work around now.
Right. The big difference is we can, when you got guys like that, then you can go into your empty set. You can always motion that guy back in the backfield and run the ball. You putting these defenses in hard situations that they don't know really what to do. You can leave them out of that receiver and run your empty set and pass the ball. You can motion them back in the backfield and still run your same offense. And at the end of the day, they can never just throw the 8-9 in the box. You always got an advantage when you can run this type of offense. So it's with Derrick Henry, as great as Derrick Henry was for Tennessee, when you're playing Tennessee, Derrick Henry is going to be in the game first or second down, and on third down, he's out of the game. He's not in the game on third down. So you don't have to worry about him on third down. 9 times out of 10, they was bringing Tajay in, and they was going to pass the ball. They weren't really going to run the ball when they brought him in on third down. So that takes away, that helps the defense out when they know you're not going to run the ball. When you take Derrick Henry out, 9 times out of 10, Tennessee are not going to run the ball. So that's how I look at it with this offense. I feel like Derrick I really don't know his feelings because I didn't talk to him about that. But as far as them letting him go and him going to another situation and the whole offense changing into a whole different situation, just me being a former player and looking at the situation, I think I would have understood it as well. Okay, they changing the whole offense to a different situation. That's why I think Derrick ended up going to Baltimore, because Baltimore is a run-first team. So that fits his running style. That fits what type of player he is and what Baltimore want to do as a whole.
Seems like it made sense for both sides at the time. Chris Johnson, CJ2K, hanging out here with us on 104.5 The Zone.
So now, Chris, Tony Pollard comes in. He joins Tyjae Spears in this Titans backfield. Feels like an interchangeable duo there that can lean into what you're talking about. And all we talk about with those two players is how similar they are, how the Titans can do the same things regardless of who's on the field. Do you see any major differences, the differences in player profile between Pollard and Spears that stick out to you in terms of their skill set?
I think they both can do the same thing, but I think Spears can do a little bit more in the passing game, whether it's like coming out running those option routes or spreading him out and running those routes on the outside. I feel like Tony Pollard, he's a better at running the ball, but he still can help you in the passing game. But I don't think he is as good as Tyjae is in the passing game. So, and then on top of that, Tyjae was a draft pick, so and he is still on his rookie contract. So it's not it's not hurting to keep him around. And they didn't pay Tony Pollard anything crazy, so why not have two guys that can help you? And at the same time, if we're, like you say, we're turning to a passing type of offense, no matter which one of those guys you put in there, you can't be like, oh, they put Tyjae in, so we know it's not going to be a run or a pass. And Tony Pollard, same thing. He can do both things. So you never know what it's going to be when either of those guys are in the game.
Will Levis coming into year two, understanding that last season was not the best. It's rarely the easiest thing to come in on a team like Will Levis did in a situation like the Titans roster was last year, and you understood why he struggled in a couple of different facets. But as you being an ambassador of the franchise, one of the most famous running backs to play in the NFL, and understanding, seeing different guys at the quarterback position kind of go through the ebbs and flows of how difficult that can be. What advice would you give for Will Levis heading into year two?
Man, just, block out all the noise and just put your head down and work, because it's I've been through it myself. Like, it's a big difference when you're going into training camp, knowing you the starter, and preparing for the season, rather than like going into training camp or not. Well, basically when you're the backup, like you're in training camp, but you're helping the defense get ready. So it's really like you're not really having a training camp, because they're preparing. When we're going into training camp, they're basically preparing the starter to get ready for the season. So when you're the backup, you just there, you getting prepared, but you there for insurance. So I done been through it where I done missed training camp and going right into the season and not having one of my best years. So him in the same situation, he was in training camp, but he wasn't the guy getting prepped, getting ready for the season. So when it's time to make the switch, you get thrown in the fire, and it's like, okay, what you gonna do? But when you're going into a training camp, you the starter, you prepping yourself for the season. It's like night and day. So I feel like you're gonna see a whole totally different guy. Even last year when he was thrown in the fire, he had his flashes, his highlights throughout those games and stuff like that. And I feel like this year we're gonna see a totally different guy, way better guy, more patient. He can make all the throws. He also that guy that, if it's 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, and he got to scramble and put his head down and get those yards, he would do it, even though we don't want to see him taking all those hits and things, because we need him throughout the season. But he's a guy that I feel like can take over and put that offense on his back, especially with all the playmakers we got. And just, we just need him to get the balls in all those guys' hands, and they'll be all right.
When's the last time you felt that way about a Titans quarterback, that you felt them capable of kind of shouldering that offense? Because it's a difficult thing to do. And I know Daniel Jeremiah at the NFL Network talks about trucks and trailers, guys who are either pulling the offense behind them or guys who are being pulled along by the offense. When's the last time you felt that way about a Titans quarterback?
I felt Vince Young can do it if he was given the proper opportunity years in and years out, because he was just a playmaker. I felt Jake Locker was a guy that really could do it, but he couldn't stay healthy. So that was, you know what I'm saying? So that kind of like derailed him a lot, because when he came in, just to see how he prepared and the things that he was doing in practice, being able to make the throws, being able to be athletic and still run the ball, scramble, and all those type of things, Jake Locker was going to be a different type of guy. But he couldn't stay healthy. So outside of those guys, I feel like Will Levis is the next guy that I feel like that can do it. And with him getting this whole training camp, it's going to be interesting to see the things that he's able to do.
Titans fans constantly feel slighted from the way that their team is talked about anywhere but Tennessee, right? And that's the case for a lot of smaller market teams. How fair do you think the coverage of the Titans is, just on the whole, and also heading into this season where they've made a lot of moves, they've added a lot of talented players, and yet still people are kind of reticent to buy into what it is that Carthon and now Brian Callahan, and to an extent Amy Adams Strunk as the owner here, are trying to execute.
Right, man. I think when it's like that, I feel like that's a good thing. You never want to be the team with all the hype and everybody saying, "Oh, they supposed to make it to the Super Bowl. They're supposed to do this every year." I.e., you look at like the Dallas Cowboys. They have all this hype every year. Every year is the year for them.
I'm so tired of talking about the Cowboys, Chris. I'm so sick of them. I just in general, right, NFL discussion, there is not a more overrated franchise.
Right. So, but when you're a player in the locker room and you're a team and you're going to play the Dallas Cowboys, you're going to give them everything you got because they got all the hype. So when you those teams are like, say, Kansas City Chiefs, and rightfully so, they've been the team to beat. So, and they get all the talks and everything. So when you go in and play these teams, you're going to get everybody best effort. So when you come in as teams that's not really talked about, and you don't have the hype, and you sneak up on these teams, and then before you look up and you know it, you 10-0, 11-0, 12-0. Like, so I feel like as players and also as teams, we really don't mind. We really don't mind not being talked about, or people like, not saying we're going to be the team or the team to look out for or anything like that. We don't mind, because when the season starts, we're going to show where we're supposed to be.
Titans legend Chris Johnson here with us on 104.5 The Zone.
Chris, we broadcast this show on YouTube and some other platforms on 104.5 The Zone TV. People can interact in the F&M Bank chat, and many people are asking, what's the 40 time looking like these days for Chris Johnson?
We're contractually obligated to ask you that question.
Hey, people, you know what? People ask me that all the time. And my answer to them is, listen, I'm not in a profession right now where I have to use that. So my 40 time is the last time I ran it. It's the same as the last time I ran it.
That's what it'll be till the end of time, right?
That's the last time I will run it. I haven't had to run the 40 since I ran it at the combine.
So with everything that you've got going on right now, and the profession that you're trying to pursue, or the avenues that you're trying to pursue in terms of personnel evaluation, what should people be looking out for on your social media platforms? What can you tell them about what your experience has been as of late and the things that you're getting into?
Well, as of late, like, I went to the scouting school out in Mobile, Alabama with Jim Nagy. And just right now, like, I'm going to just continue to look at guys, look at players, and check those guys out and give give my feedback on some of the guys, hopefully being able to get in there with Rand and, work on some guys and do some things like that. And just stay tuned for something. You'll see me somewhere doing something. You'll hear about it on my social media, on my Instagram, Chris Johnson 28. I'm going to be doing something, so.
Keep it peeled and make sure you're locked onto the social media channels, like you said. Chris, it's great to catch up with you, and we'll take advantage of that scouting that you're doing at some point. We'll have you back on to talk about some players if you're down.
All right, thank you.
That's the main man, Chris Johnson, CJ2K, with us on 104.5 The Zone. Last call for phone calls. We'll wrap up the radio show coming up next.